I am Lina Orlando. I am an awareness coach, and I am sharing with you today another bit of wisdom that I have gleaned from my spiritual journey. And I cannot believe that it's been going on for almost 14 years now. Time has truly flown by. But before I share the bit of wisdom with you today, I want to share with you where I am doing this. And it's very exciting. Check out beautiful Lake Sinclair. Isn't that an awesome view? I get to do so much of the work that I love and the writing that I'm doing right here in beautiful Lake Sinclair. It's pretty fabulous. So today the topic is self versus self. So last time I did a video, and I suggest that you go back and look at that if you haven't already done so, I spoke about the higher self, which is the capital S self, and the lower self, which is the lower S self. The lower self is our ego self. I also shared that our ego self is motivated by fear. It is completely navigating life with the fear of doing things wrong, with not being liked, with not being loved, with not being successful enough, with not being acknowledged enough, without making enough money, without being somebody. So our lower S self, it is completely focused on what the world has decided is a measure of its stature. It's a measure of its success. It's a measure of who it is, its identity. So our higher S self is the expression of love. It is motivated by love because it is love itself. So what I want to do today is give you a visual that I hope will explain why our ego self is operating from fear. So let me do it this way and draw it for us. So I want you to use your imagination. So this is all that there is. This is infinity for the purpose of this explanation. Before I do the drawing here, to illustrate the difference between our higher self, and higher S, capital S self, and our ego self, it's important to understand that what we are awakening to is the recognition that we're all pure consciousness. There is actually nothing but consciousness itself. There is an energy. There is the presence of intelligence. Call it love, call it spirit, call it creator. There is a knowingness that is all that there is. And from this knowingness, from this point of, all of consciousness, there has emanated an idea of a me, of a you. So when this idea of me or you, because God, spirit, source, whatever you want to call it, can imagine whatever it wants. I mean, all you have to do is look around this amazing planet, this amazing universe, and there's an incredible variety of things that have been thoughts first, that have been ideas first. So consciousness, God, source, spirit, has an idea, and we are it. So inside the mind of the infinite creator, there is an idea, and there I am. There you are. And as you notice, we're blended together because we're both made of the same thing. So what happens to create an ego self? Well, this separate part, which is nothing more than an identified essence of me, and the identified essence of you, not separate because we're made of the same energy, not apart from each other because we're all made of the same energy. That's what oneness is. Consciousness is one. It's one energy. But we begin to have an idea that we are separate from one another, and we encase ourselves, encircle ourselves, define ourselves with beliefs and ideas that determine who I am, and this is what I'm going to call the little s self. This is our ego self. So what is interesting is what I was made of before, what you were made of before, what creator is made of, and what is inside of me, even if I'm encased inside of an ego self, is the same energy of love. So the little me, this separate aspect of me, this one point of consciousness in the universe, is believing that it has somehow been separated from the rest of itself. The awakening process that is taking place is that inside of us there's a stirring, there's a longing to connect with who we are. There's a longing to break through the shell, the veil, the illusion, the idea that I am separate from all that is. So the reason our ego self operates from fear is because you got to use your logic here. Inside of this vast universe, when we look up to the sky, when we look at the stars, when we look at the planets, when we look at the oceans, when we look at the lake, the mountains, we recognize that we are a little speck inside of all of this. And this idea that we're just a speck, separate and all alone, instills fear. This is why our ego operates from fear, because it is afraid that it has been separated from the source of all that is. And the ego, in its belief that it is separate, it experiences fear that it is never going to get to experience the love that it really is. That's why the ego is constantly seeking, searching, wanting something else, wanting something more, never satisfied, because the ego operates with a very small, tiny idea of who it is. And believing that we're separate is madness. It's insanity. And it's crazy because we cannot be separate from what we are. We exist inside of consciousness, a point of awareness. See, you and I, as separate individual selves, get to be aware of each other. We get to be aware of the butterflies. We get to be aware of the mountains. We get to be aware of the stars. So consciousness, in its infinite intelligence, in its vast ability to love, expands itself into infinity, obviously, expanding forevermore because it is infinite. Even though it is whole and complete, we're having the experience of expansion. And to have that experience, we need somebody to experience the expansion. So you and I'm going to put you over here. And here's my dog, and here's your child, and here's the mountain, and here's the beach. All of these individualized aspects of the Creator, we are here to be able to have an experience of each other. This is why we want to connect. This is why we long for unity. However, when we don't recognize that the idea, the beliefs that we have about ourselves is what causes the experience of separation, and we get attached to what I believe about me, and if I decide that who I am is better than who you are, then I'm going to see you as separate and as potentially something that can attack me, that can affect me. That's why the ego operates from fear, because it feels insignificant in a sea of so much. So anyways, when you begin to understand that you are part of something grander, that we are all connected as the energy of love itself, forever being infinitely created by one Creator, we will begin to understand that the beliefs that we hold that tell us that we're not that is the very thing that we are awakening from. We are being released from what we think we are so that we can begin to experience and acknowledge what we actually are. That cannot be defined, therefore it cannot be thought of, but it can be felt. So I hope that this gives you a little better understanding of the difference between lower S self, our ego self, an idea of who we are, and our higher S self, what we actually are, which by the way is the same as everybody else. So if you want to know more about what I offer, please go to my website, which is www.linaorlando.com. Thanks a lot and have a magnificent day.